Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. Well, since fishing is so limited right now from this point on until ice comes in, that I thought, I want to tell you some of the things that I learned from this year. There were a few things that really stuck out to me this year. One of them was I learned that by fishing with little bitty lures, I was able to catch a lot of good fish in the tributaries. But what I found really important and has really stayed with me is that by using the little hooks on these lures, you really put I think, a great risk to the fish, because those little hooks, it's not that they won't hook the fish. You're going to catch all the fish you'd ever want to catch by using little bitty hooks. Even they'll hook and land really big fish. They get stuck in their tissue and they really stay. But one of the worst things about them is fish can easily swallow whatever lure you've got on with a tiny hook in it. There's nothing there to stop it from going into their stomach. And it's almost impossible to get a hook out of a fish's stomach. I would say the safest rule is, if you do that in the future, is just cut the line. Cut the line right above the hook so the fish isn't dragging a bunch of leader around in its mouth. But maybe that hook, in the old days, they used to say maybe the hook will rust away and the fish can live. But I've caught fish that had a hook in their stomach like months ago. You could tell they still had a little bit of leader coming out of their mouth, and they were surviving enough where they hit another lure. They sure didn't learn very well. But that's one thing that has stuck with me, that those little hooks can be dangerous. Second of all, that I wanted to tell you is, I talked to you a lot about the lines that I use. And I think braid is the most sensitive by far, of being able to feel the tiny little ticks and taps that come when a fish inhale the bait. But I have had a lot of trouble with braid, and one of the things that I've really learned is tying the right knot in braid is really critical. If you're used to tying the fisherman's knot, where you wrap it around itself 6 times and then run the tip of the line back through the little eye that you've made by starting to wrap it around the lure, if you use that knot, that'll break very easily with braid. Braid does not stay very strong with that knot. So that's something that I want you to remember, that you have to really be careful what knot you use when you're using braided line. Another thing that I wanted to pass on that I've learned this year, more than most things that I've ever noticed through the years, because a lot of things kind of stay the same. But I've found out that vertical jigging can be really effective, not just for any one species of fish, but all fish can really respond to that. So if you're in the middle of some kind of water, and you're in a boat, especially if you're in any kind of boat, and that could be a canoe, a kayak, or anything, if you get over water that's fairly deep and you just let your lure down and start learning how to fish it straight under the boat like that, it can be really, really effective. And I've told you all about the vertical jigging with a jig head and a plastic bait for lake trout, how the best way to fish them is to let it all the way to the bottom and then start just reeling it straight up, as if you'd cast it 50 feet out and are reeling it back laterally. You're bringing it straight up through the water column. You don't have to jig it or anything else. Those fish will chase it up and hit it. And this can become a really effective way to fish. It'll work for all species of fish. So that's something else that I want you all to remember, that it may be a new tip that most of us haven't tried that can work in our type of fishing as well. And the other thing that I noticed in fishing with kids that had got together to fish for little derbies or tournaments that we put together, if those kids are young and they haven't fished a lot before, it really seems like the size of the fish that they might catch really doesn't seem to mean much to them. I've watched a lot of the kids at my buddy Bill Losey's pond, that every year we'd hold a fishing event for the kids to come and try to catch the fish out of the pond. And there were many species of fish in there, but there's some really nice bass. But it didn't seem to matter to the kids whether they caught these nice bass or they were able to catch a perch or a bluegill. It didn't matter. And I think it's something that's important for all of us to remember if we're getting kids into fishing, if they've never fished before. Just let them be and discover what they enjoy about it. but it usually isn't going to be how big the fish is. Now, once they get into fishing, that may start to become important when they start competing with others. But I think in discovering the joy of fishing, the size of the fish really is secondary to the fact that you're all of a sudden working with something brand new. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner.